Because me know say if me not do it now, me not go have no time again to do it. And it's been several days now since me not read. You understand? So I'm gonna just do it now. So I'm gonna go live now, okay? No, but we have to do things when we have the time. When we get the time, because when time come, time not gonna wait for me. So I'm gonna have to do it. Right now I'm up. Right now I have the time. I'm not gonna have the time later. I am sure of that. You don't worry about it. Just let me do my thing. All right, guys. Welcome into the live. Welcome. Happy Monday morning to you all, guys. We have not been able to do our reading for the last few days. And so, because we have not been able to read for the last few days, we kind of have lost track on what has been going on with Dinah. For those of you who have been with me while since I've been reading this novel, you all will understand what this novel is about. But for those of you who are just coming in, let me just give you a little snapshot of what this novel is about. So this novel is about a young woman, a Christian young woman actually, who unfortunately got sexually violated in college, and now she is pregnant with a child from that encounter. And because she was attending a Christian college, she has been asked to leave college because, the doctrine and her situation are not in alignment. So she has been asked to leave college. The young man to whom she was engaged, he is a pastor in training, a very promising pastor in training. And so she opted to break off the engagement, give him back the ring, and has traveled back home to California to be with her parents. But she's pregnant with the child from this rape, and she is in conflict as to what to do about this pregnancy. The part of the story we last read, she was in California with her mother. They had eventually told her dad what was going on, but her mother is contemplating how to go about taking care of her daughter and helping her daughter to overcome this trauma that has been brought upon her by no action of her own. And it's difficult. It's proving to be quite difficult, both for the mother and for Dinah. But as you all know, with pregnancy, the longer you wait to terminate, the more difficult it becomes. So Dinah is living with a baby growing inside her, a baby that no doubt she didn't want, didn't plan for. And her mom, her parents, are now thrown in a position to protect her from the rest of the world and what could be said and done to her based on this pregnancy. So today we are going to continue. We are going to continue with the reading, and we are on to chapter 6. Should be right. Hold on a second. Hold on. Did we reach here? Okay, so let us begin. Let us begin. Chapter 6. James Wyatt sat on a sunny patio of his Mill Valley house, trying to fight off his deepening depression. He was never quite sure what had brought on the downward cycle, the sense of despair he couldn't seem to shake. He fought it with reason and activity and positive thinking, and yet had been able to obliterate it or cure it. It sapped his energy. Would you like coffee, Dr. Wyatt? Juanita Hernandez asked in heavily accented English as she held the pot ready. Thank you, Juanita, he said, giving her a nod. Just leave the pot, he said. Are the children up yet? He knew his wife was out for a run. Say, Senora Doctor. She stopped, looking mildly dismayed. Excuse me, she said slowly, concentrating. I mean to say yes, Dr. Wyatt. Your children are awake. James smiled at her. You are doing very well with your English, Juanita. She nodded politely, smiling back shyly. Mrs. Wyatt is a good teacher. The side gate clicked, setting off a beep from the alarm system. When it was immediately shut off, Jim knew it was his wife Cynthia, returning from her morning jog. She appeared, their rot- she appeared, their Rottweiler beside her. She unsnapped the dog's leash from the collar, and the animal dashed excitedly towards Jim. Easy, Arnold, he said, laughing, half annoyed and half pleased that the animal was so happy to see him. Scratching the dog's head and patting his back, he watched Cynthia walk towards him. She was wearing a sleeveless white t-shirt and pale blue jogging shorts. She was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. Smiling at him, she pulled off her headband and shook out her damp auburn hair. Good morning, she'd said, admiring her tanned legs and trim figure. James smiled back, lifting his cup of coffee in salutation. Did you have a good run, darling? Wonderful, it was. She sank into the chair opposite and let him breathe out. Some orange juice, please, Juanita, and a towel. I'm drenched. Yes, madame. James noted the beads of healthy sweat. Healthy sweat. James noticed the beads of healthy sweat on Cynthia's face and collarbones. Her azure eyes caught his and probed gently. I wish you would have come with me this morning, she said. Maybe tomorrow, darling. I didn't feel much like running today. He picked up his newspaper. Juanita's doing very well with her English, he remarked. She's quite bright, Cynthia said, clearly not fooled by his switch or change of subject. I'm glad you agreed to hire her. She has made things so much easier on me, and the children adore her. She's teaching them Spanish as well. That's nice. Why am I reading laying down? It sounds like I'm suffocating. Maybe sitting up and reading should be better, right? That's nice. He hid behind the newspaper, hoping she wouldn't notice he was mired in his dark thoughts. Still, how could she help but notice? She loved him. She was sensitive to his mood swings, and he had realized some time ago that she recognized the pattern. Are you working at the clinic today? It's Tuesday, he said briskly, folding the paper inside out. Nothing new in the international section. Federal budget battles, unrest in splintered Russia, Middle East conflicts, the usual grit that ground ideals down into paths of compromise and complacency, or that aroused violence. Don't do it, Synth, he thought. Don't bring it up again. Don't try to talk me out of this. He loved his wife. In fact, he adored her. But what good came of such debates between them? The last time she had suggested Jim stop working at the clinic, they had ended up in a distressing quarrel. He had reminded her that the money he had made over the past 4 years working at the clinic had paid off the student loans he had needed to get through medical school. With that money paid back, they had been able to save enough money for the practice to make the down payment on this beautiful house in Mill Valley. She had told him money wasn't the issue and the house wasn't the most important thing, but he had asked her if she'd rather rear their children in the city. Subterfuge, all of it. For all of this vehemence, they had never addressed the real issue. And that was what he didn't want to discuss. He had told her, of course, she understood the real reason that drove him to what he did. And rightfully so. He had explained 5 years ago when he had first talked with her about working at the clinic. She had admired his decision and promised to support him in whatever he did. Hadn't she always? Oddly enough, something had changed after that. He wasn't sure what it was, but there had been a subtle shift inside him, a giving way that affected their relationship. Not that they weren't happy. She had told him often enough that she couldn't be happier. He did his best to be loving, tender, thoughtful, hardworking, devoted to his family, devoted to his practice. He was a man of deep feelings and principles, determined to give the best care he could to all his patients. Yet, sometimes he saw a look in her eyes, a troubled expression, as though she wondered if he was happy with her. He knew why the doubts came, realized there were weeks when he wouldn't make love to her, but there were other times too when he would have a ravenous need, almost as though the act of love itself might drive away whatever tormented him. Why don't we go away this weekend? He sighed. She probably thought a change of scene might curb the tide of his depression and take his. Really? Hold on there, guys. Hold on. All right, I am back. Let us continue reading. I still have a little rasp going on, but that's okay. It might add some character to the reading anyway. Morning again, Sister Winsome. How you doing, my dear? I am back at it again while I have the time. May as well go ahead and read the book because I haven't read it in almost a week. And and because I haven't read it in so long, I know that I'm not the only one who is kind of losing my train of thought when it comes on to the book. So here I am reading again today. Let us continue. Uh-oh. Where was I? Hmm. Okay. Why don't we go away for the weekend? He sighed. She probably thought a change of scene might curb the tide of his depression and take his mind off his worries. Well, why not? Alan Keller could stand in at the practice. Jim had covered him last weekend. Good idea. Where do you suggest? How about Carmel? It's been 2 months since we were there. Or we could go back to Calistogo. That bed and breakfast was nice. He turned another page and reached the regional news. Fine. Or we could stay here, have your mother pick up the children and keep them for a night, rent a couple of romantic movies, turn up the heat in the spa, stock some champagne. Whatever he said, his eyes focused on a small article at the bottom of the page. A young woman had been found dead in San Francisco. A preliminary investigation had dismissed foul play and considered the possibility of suicide. Although no note was found, friends had reported that she had been despondent over the past few days. The coroner would make the determination. James didn't recognize the young woman's name, but he knew the face. He had performed an abortion on her 6 days earlier. OMG. A chill swept over him. Stop it, he chided himself. It has nothing to do with you. Odds were good that it didn't. She had probably had a host of problems that seemed overwhelming. He had solved one for her, but he couldn't solve everything. How could he? How could he? In a few minutes, he had been with her, maybe 15. That's all it took to do the procedure, and she hadn't said much of anything, had she? He tried to remember. It hurts. Oh God, it hurts. They said it wouldn't. Had that been her or some other girl? No matter how gentle he tried to be, it remained a common complaint. He soothed his patience. He soothed his patients as best he could by telling them it would soon be over. Sometimes he wondered if it was the sound of the machine that tensed up their bodies and worsened the pain. Sometimes he could hear that horrible sucking sound in his dreams. And you know what he's talking about, right? He's talking about the horrible, grotesque sounds of him performing abortions. Grotesque, unforgettable, and necessary if he was to get the job done. Jim, blinking, he glanced up sharply and found his wife staring at him with a frown of concern. What's wrong? Nothing, he said quickly. Just the same lousy news every day. He folded the newspaper so the story was hidden inside and tossed it onto the cement. He didn't want it on the table. He didn't want it anywhere near him. Forcing a smile, he picked up his coffee cup and took a sip. Now, what were you saying? Juanita delivered breakfast, poached eggs, more freshly squeezed orange juice, and newly baked bran muffins, all served elegantly on Lennox china. He wasn't hungry, but he forced himself to eat. He needed the calories to get through the day, and he didn't want to worry Cynthia. He might have been able to keep the facade in place had his two children not come racing happily into the backyard, eager for kisses and hugs from mommy and daddy. Oh my God. He was eager to dispense both, shocked at the degree of pain that shot through him as he watched them scamper off with Arnold. Cynthia laughed at their antics. Patricia, aptly nicknamed Cricket, hopped excitedly around with the dog, while her brother Todd ran for the tennis ball. As soon as he had it in his hand, he heaved it across the lawn, sending the dog into a frenzied chase. Arnold, fetch! He hadn't needed to utter the command. Love swelled inside James as he watched his children. With love came affliction. You got her? Oh, you hear you? All right, sir. Put them together. Let me drop them. Let's continue. Love swelled inside James as he watched his children. With love came affliction. His heart ached, fairly throbbed with some unreasoning anguish. He listened to the laughter and watched his children play, bright spots of joy in his own backyard, and felt a smothering grief he couldn't dispel and didn't understand. He was oppressed with it. Now, you see, guys, I wonder if he's oppressed and depressed because in his own line of work, he's a doctor who performs abortions. So in his own line of work, he essentially gets rid of children who could provide the same joy to their parents as his children are providing to him. You see what's causing his depression? Let us continue. What's wrong, Jim? Cynthia said, and he glanced at her, surprised to discover there were tears in his eyes. Nothing, he said again, because he couldn't put words to it. Sometimes beauty did that to him. He remembered feeling this way when Cynthia said she'd marry him. Overwhelmed with gratitude, amazed by his good luck, pushing his chair back, he stood. I'd better get on the road, he said. I'm going to be late as it is. The Golden Gate Bridge would be backed up with traffic. Walking with him, Cynthia looped her arm through his and smiled up at him playfully. You could always wait another hour and avoid the traffic. I need to take my shower, he said. Want to wash my back? He laughed, giving no response. Dropping his arm, he put his hand tightly at her waist so she could enter the house ahead of him. She crossed the family room with its cathedral ceiling and wall bookshelves and fireplace. Picking up his sports jacket, she held it so he could shrug into it. Coming around in front of him, she straightened the lapels and ran her hands down over his jacket. She, she looked up at him tenderly. You are so handsome, Dr. Wyatt. He made a noncommittal sound. Reaching up, Cynthia touched his cheek, drawing his attention. I love you, Jim. You know that, don't you? Jim searched her eyes briefly and then leaned down, kissing her firmly on the mouth. I know. Straightening, he smiled ruefully. God only knows why. Because you care so much, she said. He prayed it was the truth, that anyone who knew him for 10 minutes would realize he wasn't what those pro-lifers said in the anonymous letters they found in the mail all too frequently. One had come yesterday, some Christian zealot, quoting scripture, on fire for God, ready and eager to burn someone. The letter was now ashes in the fireplace. He hadn't told Cynthia about it and didn't intend to. She would only worry. Twice before, he had received death threats. This letter had been mild by comparison, just the usual vitriolic words and rhetorical questions meant to shame and intimidate. Still, it amazed him. It always did, almost as much as it amazed him to see Cynthia's anger. How could people who claim to live a life in the name of love and Jesus be so heartless in their condemnation and judgment? She had asked. Have they ever once thought to walk in your shoes? They don't even try to understand what makes a man like you do what you feel you have to do. Besides, if abortion isn't right, why is it legal? Why is the government paying for it? He'd had no answers for her then or now. He watched her pick. He watched her turn to pick up her black leather medical bag. It was heavy, yet less than his burdened heart. Unfairly so. He cared so much. He knew what happened when someone wasn't there to help. Thank God Cynthia understood that. From the beginning, she had supported him in his work, just as she had supported him financially those last few years of medical training. They had been lean and hard, years of sacrifice. She told him that's when she had seen how much he cared. Through the long hours he studied and worked, the patients he tended to, the grief he felt when he lost someone, no matter how hopeless the case was. She knew his anguish and convictions. She knew his dreams. She knew his heart. And she loved him for all of it. That was what kept him going. His wife, his family, their love. She held the bag out to him and wished him well in the day ahead. Jim took it. I have a couple patients to see at the hospital. Then I'll be at the office for a couple of hours. I don't expect to be at the clinic until 1. She knew he was telling her he would be late coming home. Should I hold dinner? No, he wouldn't be hungry. Leaning down, he kissed her lightly. I don't know what I'd do without you, Cynthia. Work yourself to death, she said with a loving smile. She drew his head down again, kissing him firmly. I'll be waiting for you, darling. Elizabeth Chambers pressed the intercom. How many? 12. If the wait was too long, 1 or 2 clients would probably ask for their money back and leave. Any sign of Dr. Wyatt? Not yet. Elizabeth clenched her teeth to keep from venting her anger. Dr. Franklin had already left for the day, or she would have pressed for him to stay an hour longer. Dr. Wyatt's tardiness was becoming habitual. Maybe she should increase his cut. She had little doubt that would bring him running to the clinic in a timely manner. Unfortunately, right now, she had to deal with the problem. Call his practice. See if there's been some emergency. Jim always called if. I said call him. Yes, Miss Chambers. And tell Brenda I want to talk to her. Lifting her finger from the intercom, she cut off any excuse that might be forthcoming. Picking up her pencil, Elizabeth tapped it repeatedly for a moment and then tossed it onto the desk in annoyance. Now means now, not 5 minutes from now. Flipping the ledger closed, she opened her desk drawer, dropped the ledger in, and slammed the drawer shut. What a day! Sometimes she wondered why she kept on with this miserable, stinking job. If the money weren't so good, she would have been gone long ago. She was sick to death of dealing with other people's problems. Problems that made her them problems they made for themselves, and she had to help clean up. Most of the money went to the corporation that owned the facility. Through their names, though their names were nowhere to be seen, they wanted to stay squeaky clean in some elegant high rise. Oh my word. I hope it wasn't Dinah that took her own life. But anyway, guys, my grandbabies have presented themselves. Therefore, I am going to abort the reading. I'm going to go have a breakfast.